When you believe your silence means nothing, that belief itself is part of the psychological spell the narcissist has cast over you. Clinicians often explain that victims of narcissistic abuse underestimate the power of their withdrawal because they have been conditioned, through intermittent reinforcement and emotional manipulation, to see themselves as insignificant. But the moment you choose silence, true silence, no checking their social media, no replying, no chasing, no crumbs of attention, you trigger a psychological collapse inside the narcissist. Psychologists say narcissists experience abandonment not as sadness but as a threat to their entire self-constructed identity, which is why your silence slowly eats away at them from the inside. Remember, you were the one who gave endlessly. You were groomed to stay in that role forever. Narcissists design relationships with predictable power dynamics, and according to experts, they categorize people solely by use value. They expected your devotion, they counted on your patterns, and they built their strategies around the assumption that you would always remain emotionally accessible. And you already know the sting of silent treatment. They used it as a weapon. You felt the anxiety, the confusion, the self-blame. But psychologists emphasize that your reaction to silence comes from empathy. Theirs comes from dependency. That's why, for a narcissist, silence is far more psychologically devastating than it ever is for an empath. When a narcissist imposes silence on an empath, the empath initially struggles. Psychologists note this is due to trauma bonding and emotional dysregulation, but ultimately, the empath grows stronger. Meanwhile, the narcissist deteriorates. Their supply source weakens, their mask slips, and they spiral downward. Their reaction is so extreme because, as therapists explain, narcissists rely on external validation to maintain even a basic sense of emotional equilibrium. Without supply, their internal world collapses. You flourish. They rot. They initiated discards and silent treatments because they thought they knew you. Narcissists operate under rigid mental models. They believe once they've read you, you're predictable forever. Experts say this cognitive inflexibility is part of the narcissistic personality structure. They cannot fathom that you might change, awaken, or stop complying. But the moment they see that spark, when they notice you are breaking the spell, when something in your energy shifts, they panic. They see the awakening in your eyes before you even speak. That's why discards often happen right before your breakthrough. They think disappearing will lock you back into confusion and force you to chase. This is why psychological experts emphasize the importance of reclaiming your energy. Stop pouring endlessly into people who only take. Silence isn't just a tactic, it's a psychological boundary. When you refuse to engage, you signal to your nervous system and to the universe itself that you're done being drained. Sometimes the narcissist goes silent first, not as power but as prediction, anticipating your eventual collapse. Yet ironically, that moment is often the universe showing you that silence is exactly what you need. And that silence crushes them from the inside. They might look fine externally. Narcissists excel at surface performance, but psychologists explain that internal narcissistic injury often manifests physically. Changes in appearance, sleep disruption, irritability, impulsive behaviors, and emotional volatility. When your energy is no longer sustaining them, when the light they stole has burned out, when the supply is cut off, your silence becomes their downfall. They need validation the way lungs need air. And the level of need is primal. Experts say narcissistic craving for validation is exponentially deeper than what healthy people experience. Without it, their false self disintegrates. That's why your silence destroys them, piece by piece. Inside, they are unraveling. And this unraveling is not subtle, it is a psychological implosion. Recognize that your silence is not unnoticed. Psychologists insist that no contact is the most effective form of self-protection and the most psychologically destabilizing consequence for a narcissist. Yet too many people treat it like a cliché instead of understanding its power. No contact is your declaration of sovereignty. It communicates to yourself, to the universe, and to the narcissist that you are no longer available to be drained. They expected a flood of supply. They planned for it. They depended on it. And even if you slipped once, pursuing, responding, trying to fix, your renewed silence still hits them like a blow they never saw coming. And honestly, it's okay that your heart once overflowed in ways they didn't deserve. Psychologists often remind survivors that overgiving isn't a flaw. It's a coping mechanism shaped by empathy, attachment history, and a desire for harmony. But the lesson remains. Not everyone is worthy of your softness. Your energy is a currency, and narcissists spend it recklessly because they assume it will always replenish itself. Yet once you withdraw that energy and begin the process of transmuting your pain into power, something profound happens. Experts say trauma can become transformation when you redirect your emotional bandwidth back into yourself. This is why the universe, or whatever spiritual language resonates for you, pushes you towards silence. It's asking you to realign your energy with people who are capable of reciprocity, respect, and emotional maturity. From every narcissistic experience, psychologists say survivors gain a sharper intuitive compass. Your nervous system becomes wiser, more discerning. Every time you reclaim your energy instead of pouring it into someone who drains you, you are rewiring old patterns. Patterns that once taught you to settle, to tolerate crumbs, to accept emotional starvation as love. And this is why therapists constantly repeat the same principle. Do not settle for less. Healthy relationships are built on mutual nourishment, not emotional extraction. Even if it takes an entire lifetime to find someone who meets you with genuine reciprocity. Friend, colleague, partner. It is better to wait than to shrink yourself for someone who can't even see your worth. Psychologists call this self-worth recalibration, and it is the heart of recovery. And as you rise into this new version of yourself, something else begins to unfold. You start impacting others in ways you don't even realize. Your presence, your kindness, your resilience, they radiate into the world. Psychologists who study post-traumatic growth say survivors often become anchors of light in their communities without even trying. Every smile you offer a stranger, every moment of patience with a coworker, every bit of love poured into your children or your work, it expands outward. This is the work that actually matters, not the endless emotional labor you once poured into someone who only drained you. And when narcissists see or sense that you're getting ahead, silently, steadily, without them, this becomes your silent revenge. Psychologically, narcissists are developmentally stunted. They depend heavily on external validation to maintain a fragile ego. They cannot evolve in the way you can. They may grow slightly wiser with time, but their emotional limitations remain. Their charm fades, their influence wanes. Their manipulative tricks lose power because the people around them eventually catch on. The world stops responding the way it used to, and when they realize you have moved on, growing, rebuilding, becoming someone they can no longer control, the envy hits them like a psychological landslide. Experts describe this as narcissistic envy rage, a toxic blend of insecurity and hatred. They resent your growth because it forces them to confront their own stagnation. They come back with hostility, with agendas, with bitterness, because your silence has stripped them of their favorite power, the ability to control your emotions. And this is why silence is not just a boundary, it is a psychological mirror that reflects back to them everything broken inside themselves. This is why you need silence now more than ever. Silence is not passive. It is an active psychological strategy. One therapists recommend precisely because it prevents you from being manipulated into emotional reactions narcissists feed on like oxygen. When you stop providing those reactions, you interrupt the trauma bond. Your nervous system begins recalibrating. Your mind returns to clarity. And their attempts to bait you, those little provocations, the cryptic posts, the flying monkeys, the sudden outreach, start to lose their power. If you slipped in the past, if you begged, pleaded, tried to fix, tried to reason, tried to love them into being better, psychologists say this was a normal response to trauma, not a shameful one. Empathic individuals often attempt reconciliation because their attachment system is wired toward repair, not destruction. Narcissists knew this. They counted on it. They expected the aftermath. The emotional collapse, the chasing, the self-blame. But guess what? That aftermath hasn't happened. Not fully. Not anymore. And now your job is to ensure it never does. Do not let them bait you into another reaction. Do not give them the satisfaction of seeing you emotionally spiral. Your silence is the boundary that protects everything you are rebuilding. It is the shield between you and their chaos. It is the doorway to your healing. Thank you for listening, for doing the inner work, for choosing yourself. If you need deeper guidance, personalized strategies, or a safe place to unpack the psychological aftermath, sessions are available. And if you'd like to support the channel, your presence alone already means more than you know. I'll be back with another message soon. Stronger, clearer, and ready to walk with you through the next stage of your healing.